For just $1, you can make this everything dough, which unlocks the door to these 4 amazing dishes. We'll start our dough by adding 250 grams of warm water to a bowl, which should be slightly hotter than body temp. Then add 27 grams of sugar, 7 grams of salt, and 7 grams of yeast. Give it a quick mix so the sugar and salt dissolve and cover with plastic wrap. Let that sit for 10 minutes to fully bloom. Next, get out your stand mixer and add 350 grams of bread flour to the bowl along with 20 grams of milk powder. The milk powder is totally optional. Give that a quick mix before adding your yeast mixture. Run the stand mixer on low for a few minutes until all the ingredients are mixed together. While that's going, cube 25 grams or 2 tablespoons of room temp butter and add it to the dough. Run the stand mixer on low until the butter is mixed in, then speed it up to really work the dough. Move the dough to a lightly floured surface and work it into a ball by tucking the rough edges underneath. Smooth like a baby's butt. Add a few drips of oil to a bowl and rub that around. Cover and let the dough proof for an hour until the dough triples in size. Now our dough is ready to be used for all 4 recipes. We'll be starting with the classic loaf of bread. Take 500 grams of the dough we just made and divide it into 3 even pieces. The best way to do this is with the scale, but of course you can always eyeball this. If a piece weighs too much, cut small chunks off, which we can easily fold in. Fold the rough edges underneath to make 3 balls. To fold in the scraps, place them on the rough side and fold them underneath until you get a nice ball. We'll cover the balls for 15 minutes until they double in size. We'll be working with 1 ball at a time here, so cover the other 2 while we make our rolls. Lightly flour the surface of the dough and roll it into a 7-inch by 10-inch rectangle. Fold that into thirds, pinch the end, and roll that boy up. You should be left with 3 cinnamon roll looking like things. Butter a loaf pan and we'll add our rolls. Make sure the seam points towards the center for the side rolls. For the middle roll, don't worry about which way the seam points. Cover that in plastic wrap and wait for an hour while the dough proofs. Now let's make a quick egg wash to get some color on that bread. Add 1 tablespoon of water and 1 egg to a bowl and whisk until super smooth. Brush the tops and just look at that shine. Throw it in a 385-degree oven for 30 minutes.
Hey, I don't know what happened, but my baby has a few pimples.
Let the loaf cool for a couple hours and cut yourself a slice. If you want to eat this bread, make sure to take a bite out of that subscribe button. Check out those layers and how springy the bread is. You can have some, but save a little for the upcoming recipes. Now let's make some buns for our next recipe, tamago sandos, or Japanese egg sandwiches. Separate the rest of the dough into 4 even pieces. They should each weigh roughly 50 grams. We'll take the same step as before and roll these up into balls. Let them rise for an hour and a half until they've doubled in size and brush on some of that egg wash you made earlier. Sprinkle with black sesame seeds and bake in a 375-degree oven for 30 minutes. Next, we'll hard boil 6 eggs. Poke some holes into the bottom of these Eggos. This stops the eggs from cracking in the boiling water. Boil for 10 minutes and drop those babies into a cold plunge. When the eggs are cool, peel them and cut them in half. Scoop the egg yolks into a bowl and chop those egg whites into tiny pieces. Add the egg whites to a bowl along with 73 grams of Japanese mayo, a couple shakes of black pepper, a pinch of salt, and 2 grams of sugar. Fold the ingredients together, being careful not to mush the egg whites. Cut a black sesame bun in half, add a couple scoops of the egg mixture to the bun, chop up some chives, and sprinkle around the edges of the sando.
Oh, this looks so good. I can't wait. Oh no. Okay. It didn't need that much egg anyways.
For our next recipe, let's do another Japanese dish, Croquette, aka croquettes. Finally mince 140 grams or half an onion. Next, do the same with about 70 grams of carrot. And finally, we'll dice 2 russet potatoes, which is about 448 grams or 1 pound, into even pieces. Fill a pot with cold water and add your potatoes. Bring to a boil and simmer until the potatoes are fork tender, about 15 minutes. Add a tablespoon of oil to a pan over medium heat and add the onions. Add a nice pinch of salt and we'll slowly cook those down to get out as much moisture as possible, about 15 minutes. Next, we'll add the carrots and saute for a few minutes. Add 1 pound of ground beef and season again with a pinch of salt. Stir it up and cook until there's no more pink in the beef, and we'll scoop that aside to cool. Drain your potatoes, put them through a potato ricer or mash them up, and add a tablespoon of butter. Add the cooled ground beef mixture, season with more salt, and mix until the butter is melted and everything is mixed well. Form 6 even patties and refrigerate while we make some fresh breadcrumbs. Add some chunks of the bread we made earlier to a food processor and pulse until we have coarse crumbs. Add the crumbs to a pan, spread spread them out, and put that in a 350-degree oven and dry them out for 8 minutes. If you don't think these are worth making, check out the difference between store-bought panko and homemade panko. Those bigger crumbs will be much crunchier and have a much better texture. Melt a tablespoon of butter in a pan over medium heat and toast the breadcrumbs for about 10 minutes until they're nice golden brown. You might need to throw the pan in the oven for a few minutes to brown the bigger crumbs. Prepare a bowl with half a cup of flour and another bowl with 2 whisked eggs. Take a patty and cover every surface with flour. Dip it in the egg and let it sit for a sec to soak up. Finally, cover in the toasted breadcrumbs. With some of the bigger crumbs, you may want to press them gently into the surface. Add them to a wire rack on a cookie sheet and put the patties in a 350-degree oven for 10 minutes. They just need to warm up since everything is already cooked. Now we'll prep a tonkatsu sauce for the korokke. To a bottle, add 4.5 tablespoons or 68 grams of Worcestershire, 5 tablespoons or 90 grams of ketchup, 2 tablespoons or 38 grams of oyster sauce, and 2 teaspoons or 8 grams of sugar. Now close that up and shake what your mama gave you.
Oh, fuck.
You just made yourself a nice little tonkatsu sauce.
Okay, honestly, I did eat the other 5 korokke, but I did save the best for last.
Hey, that's how you know this is going to be a good recipe. Next, you'll add some of the chives from earlier and serve.
Anybody else just love sauce?
And finally, let's make a delicious caramel bread pudding. Add 2 eggs, 48 grams or 1/4 cup of sugar, and a tiny bit of salt to a bowl before whisking until the eggs are smooth. Add 1.5 cups of milk, a splash of vanilla, and mix again. Next, grab the loaf of bread we made earlier and cut off 2 thick slices. Treat yourself for the hard work and cut those slices into chunks. Drop those chunkos into a 9-inch pan and lay them flat. Pour over half the custard mixed directly onto the bread so it soaks in. Wait a bit, then pour in the other half. This is to make sure the bread actually sits in the pan instead of float. Bake at 350 for 35 minutes and broil for a minute or 2 to get some color. While that's going, let's make some caramel sauce. Add 2 tablespoons or 24 grams of sugar and 1 tablespoon of water to a pot over medium heat. Let it sit until you get this nice dark caramel color and it begins to smoke slightly. Next, we'll add 1 tablespoon of hot water to the caramel so the sugar doesn't harden. And there you go, a nice little caramel sauce for the bread pudding.
I burnt it a little, but I think it makes it look pretty nice. Kind of reminds me of toasted marshmallows.
Drizzle that evenly over the bread pudding and it's ready to eat.
Ooh. The burnt parts are actually really good in this because they add a lot of texture and the burnt flavor isn't overwhelming. Pretty good, pretty good.